All right, everybody, and welcome to a very special episode here. I have a special guest with me, the GD Protoman himself.
How you doing, guys? Glad to be here.
Now, this year, in the wake of the whole HasCon thing, I'm sure you're familiar that HasCon. Well, we were supposed to get a HasCon 2019, but it has been postponed, quote unquote. Uh, Read canceled. But yeah, it brings into questions many things like what if BotCon was still around? If BotCon was still around, this would be the 25th anniversary of BotCon since it started, back in 1994. So the math works out. And I got to thinking, what if there was a BotCon set this year? And I came up with the theme of the Wreckers, because the Wreckers, at least back when I was a kid growing up and dreaming of going to BotCon, the Wreckers were kind of like the thing in BotCon. We had like the 3H
Yeah, the
Wreckers and
Hallett
stuff.
era.
Yeah. So I came up with a few ideas that could homage that era and kind of BotCon in general and the Wreckers in general. So without further ado, I came up with the first one here is Arcee. Yeah, so basically it would homage that old BotCon Arcee, which I
From
believe,
2001.
which I believe was the first transforming Arcee figure.
It
That
was it was it was technically the first ever RC figure. Period. If you don't count like PVC figures and stuff like that. So yeah, technically the first ever transforming RC figure.
yeah. So yeah, it was basically between the Legends version and the the original animated version, which the animated version would kind of be better for G1 because of just kind of the chest shape is similar to the original, but I kind of went with the Legends one because that's closer to the Transmetal 2 RC, which is
Also the head sculpt too.
yeah. So I thought that was a pretty good one. Uh, you got nothing else to comment on there for that
Oh,
one?
it's a good idea. It's
Yeah.
a pretty good idea. It's something that I would imagine probably BotCon would have considered. I know that in the very last year, because I worked with them very closely in the very last year,
Yeah.
they were looking at a lot of those original sculpted stuff from the legend side of things. Like when they were actually planning the Air Razor,
Mm-hmm.
the original plan was to use the Windblade mold from the Generations whatever Legends line. And that was the original plan because it's like, oh, okay, the samurai thing from Japan, and she comes with a sword. And so, because RC was, kind of based in this samurai mythology and the Japanese version of Beast Wars, maybe we'll do that. And I have it somewhere on my computer somewhere, the old like mock-ups of if they would use the Windblade mold. And then later on, we found out that we were able to use all that legend stuff. We jumped right into that Slipstream retool.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. I'm pretty sure, like if it would have continued, especially with the 25th anniversary year, that's something they probably would have revisited.
Mm-hmm. All right. So the next one is another BotCon exclusive, which my idea here is that they would remold the Beast Head, and I'm not too familiar on the Titans Returns, like the different heads and stuff. So I just kept the same head, which I think works. But basically, the BotCon Catscan figure, which was originally a repaint of the Knight slash Cheetor figure, but this time using the Titans Returns Weird Wolf, again with a remolded beast head, so it wouldn't be a wolf anymore, and it would be, a cat.
Well, considering the track record that BotCon had with Boss Fight Studios, that was kind of in charge of a lot of their remolding and stuff, it wouldn't surprise me. We were never able to truly see what BotCon would have done in a Titan's Return kind of playground, if you will,
Yeah.
with all these swapping heads and all that kind of stuff. I mean, would we get brand new head sculpts completely made? Would we get just a clever use of swapping heads and stuff? So it's something that, I mean, like you have here, you have just the original one used with Weirdwolf, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if almost all the head sculpts were brand new head sculpts made just specifically for the line. And the question I would have to ask you is, while you would use Catscan is the name of the character and stuff based off of the BotCon character, but what would the smaller robot be?
I don't know. Could make up an original
Character-wise,
character.
yeah, that's something that I would be curious, because that's always been kind of a theme, especially with Headmasters. So in this case, or in Prime Masters or Titan Masters, who that smaller character would be.
Who knows? Could be like an homage to like one of the characters, like just the background characters that you'd see like in Beast Machines. Just pick out like some guy and say oh, this is his name, and he's the head for Catscan, or
that's a possibility. Like or there were some of the mini bots that were used the same year that Catscan came out. There was also like Rook and Glyph and Tap Out and stuff like that. They used all those mini bot repaints. Maybe Rook would be the head. I don't know.
Yeah,
just throwing out some, because again, it's another BotCon character, if you will. So, which was the repaint of the Wind Charger.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That was my first BotCon, was 2001. That's why I'm so familiar with it. So
yeah. All right. So the next one, keeping with old BotCon exclusives, is Rotorbolt. I believe that's how you say his name.
Yeah, Rotorbolt.
Rotorbolt, who was, I believe he was supposed to be a repaint of the Obsidian mold, but I don't think he ever got released.
It was one of those funny things where it was going to be released, and then it kind of got released in a 2-pack in the Universe 1.0 line.
Yeah, there was one that was very similar that came
very,
with
very,
Tankor.
very similar. Yeah, it came with the Tankor, which had like, I don't know, I wasn't hot on the Tankor's colors. It was very weird colors, like a orangey yellow with greens.
Mm-hmm.
But the Obsidian that was packed with it, which was called Obsidian, was very similar to this. Very similar purples and stuff like that. Not dead on, but you could clearly see that. And especially a lot of those early releases from Universe 1.0 back in the day, a lot of those were kind of like not BotCon ideas, if you want to call them that. Like there were a lot of ideas that stemmed from BotCon, but just ended up in mass retail instead.
Yeah.
Like the Sky Warp out of the Jetstorm, for one example.
Oh yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Was Rotorbolt like a character before BotCon? I think there was like a Rotor Storm
yes, he was.
or something.
There was a character from the UK that was called Rotorbolt, and that's where the name comes from. Although the color scheme was not similar to that.
Oh, okay. So yeah, pretty basic, just kind of like a all purple repaint of Highbrow.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure.
And again, if it's one of those things where maybe they would have made a new head, maybe not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Because it's basically they could just the whole face is just like one piece, more or less.
Oh yeah, most Titan Masters were pretty much 3 pieces of plastic. You know what I mean? I'm pretty sure, and I don't know how it worked on the mold tree, but considering how a lot of those Titan Masters were like some of them were just heads all in themselves when they were being released. So there's a lot of stuff that could have been done. Like when we were working on the 2015 set, and even like the subscription service stuff in the last 2 years, like the freedom was not as much there because you had to work within the confines of what was available on the model tree. With this, it's like, you have all this stuff that was these X factors because of having these Titan returns heads that were in themselves a separate product.
Yeah.
Because so it's like you could go like, oh, well, we'll just throw out the heads that came with, this Rotorbolt job that we would have done from, what do you call it? From, man, why am I blanking on his name right now?
The Highbrow?
Highbrow, thank you. Like we could just throw out his head and we'll just take one of the heads from one of the single packs and just retool that one and work from there, and then like include like the animal or whatever, or the vehicle that comes with that head as an extra accessory or something. Like there's so much creativity that could have been done with that, and that's why it's such a shame that BotCon ended that early, because it ended right at a point where creativity could have been at an all-time high.
Yeah.
For, like imagine the army building sets. Oh my God, they could have done like 20 head army building sets.
Oh yeah.
That would have been crazy or something. Because I mean, in the same way that you saw how they got really creative when they had Creo for that brief period of time to work with, it's the same thing here. They would have had tons of creativity with all this that Titan Return ecosystem of design.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I remember it was like a big deal back when, in BotCon, like when a figure would have a new head, but here, like you could just easily swap the heads, no problem. Like
Shadow Striker and Roulette was the first time that happened, and everyone lost their minds. It was just like, oh my God, the female Viper twins, like that was amazing. And then ever since then, it was kind of a norm.
All right, so continuing with the deluxes, another old school wrecker, and personally, I would use the Beast Hunters Arcee mold, and there's customs of that online, which I don't know. Did you want me to show you one of those, Daniel, or?
Oh no, I could kind of envision what you meant with that because it has more of the bat kind of design. I think that they probably would have not revisited because they used it for Flame War, like originally, like for what year was that? That was 2014.
Yeah, it was 2014, 15, something.
Yeah,
somewhere around there.
And I think also at that point, a kind of a theme with BotCon is they rarely wanted to usually go super back in the catalog of toys. I know that when they were planning the idea for Tigatron, there was the original thought of using the drift mold, and then as silly as it sounds, some people would pipe up and say that was too old and a mold to use, and they wanted to use more Combiner War stuff. So it's even though in all honesty, I think it would have worked out better if they used the drift mold.
Yeah.
But it's just it's the same thing where it's like, I can't imagine them wanting to go revisit a Transformers Beast Hunters Prime mold in an environment where now you have all that Titan Return stuff. Like, I almost feel like they would have forced in Titan Return stuff, even if it didn't make sense. In this case, I mean, it does make sense because it's a bat, but I think that they would have tried to force it in, even if there wasn't a bat transformer. So in Mind Wipe, they would have been like, okay, we'll take this one that turns into a jet then, and say it's her pre-Cybertron mode.
Yeah, that's the other one I was thinking of. Maybe just straight up use the Windblade mold.
Windblade, or even retool a Brainstorm or something, and just try to be creative. It's always the difficulty when you're doing female characters. If you want to have more of a female form, or if you want to go for something that's a little more blocky and less traditional. So it's hard to say. It's hard to say. Like in the past, again, a lot of female Transformer characters, with the exception of, let's say, Spy Changers and stuff, they usually try to maintain a certain shape. I mean, with the exception of obviously when Victorion came around, and all of that stuff was repaints of pre-existing characters, so they were able to kind of go, okay, these are all female characters, and they're all using those same blocky designs as these, Menasor and Stunticons and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
All right, so now we're getting into the pairs of characters here, and so keeping with the Wreckers theme, longtime Wreckers Twin Twist and Topspin. Obviously they received figures in the Titans Return line, so why not reuse those molds and repaint them as their South American exclusive repaints, the Saltman or Robot Man Z and X, or Z and X, since we're in Canada.
And those there used to be a time where we'd always expect tons of repaints of every mold that we get.
Yeah.
And now we're kind of in this era now where it's like we get a brand new mold and it doesn't get a repaint at all. Where a lot of these Titan Return molds, they really saw maybe one or two color schemes. And again, those jump starter characters from Generations, I'm surprised they didn't get more than what they already got.
Yeah.
I mean, like now, like recently we got that really weird big power Diatlas, crazy.
Yeah, that crazy
and they,
one. Yeah.
And they managed to use those characters to kind of make those. But that being said, like that was like, I would have never guessed that in my life that would have happened. But they managed to make Roadfire out of that. But the point is that, I mean, this is a given. Like, this is something that would have totally been a BotCon thing.
Yeah.
Or BotCon, or I almost feel more subscription service. I think that would have been a shoo-in for something for the subscription service for sure.
Maybe even split them up and do.
Oh yeah.
Do one as a BotCon exclusive and one as a subscription service.
Oh,
FunPub was pretty. They're usually pretty cruel with doing that kind of stuff.
I would not personally suggest that, but that's something that you're right would have happened.
Yeah. And basically, all they've had is like that the previous TFCon exclusive, other than like their original G1
pretty much
figures.
It, yeah.
Like, and like this would be just like a easy slam dunk kind of one for them.
Prototype X and Protoform Z from TFCon was the last time, and those were pretty cool. Those ones.
Yeah. So the next ones, unfortunately, I don't have any photoshops for you at this time, Daniel, but they will be done as you're watching this, my audience. But the other idea for the smaller figures I had was taking the Siege Hound mold and repainting it as Iron Fist, or as he goes by online, Physitron.
That's a given.
Yeah. So, like, he received an animated version of his toy, or of his character back in 2011, I think it was. But
yes.
I don't think the character has received, like, any toys, like, since his G1 figure, other than that animated one. So I think this will be a good fit for him.
There was, amazingly, there was plans at one point. It was I remember Pete Sinclair did like this huge panel where there was like a lot of just ideas they threw out, and they were going to do probably something with Iron Fist or Physitron, as you mentioned, using the old generation's Hound mold that came with the Ravage.
Right.
But of course that was all stuff that, like, ended up never happening. And then they did that other one there, that like Shattered Glass Ironhide one, Shattered Glass Hound, which was really just
the Turbo Master.
Yeah, which they ended up making a Turbo Master, and then it was retconned as Shattered Glass instead, and then they had the Shattered Glass Ravage with it. So like it's all that kind of process where it's like, we have this mold, what do we do with it? And then there's kind of like, they go through the process of like, well, here's what it comes with. Can we do a head resculpt with it? So, but that's one I could see also. That's one I could see them doing, and they wouldn't even have to really even do a head resculpt, because I think that's a head that they could have worked with too.
Yeah. Or there was, I believe on the box art they showed what looked like the Cybertron Hotshot head sculpt. I think that might even work better for Iron Fist, because it has like the similar kind of like the brow visor thing above his head.
Yeah, I agree. That would work well.
Yeah. And the other ones, I don't have photoshops for you at the moment, but they will be in the video. So we had the release of the Duocons recently with Battle Trap and Flywheels. So there's the Duo bots in the IDW comics, Shock and Ore. So how about doing repaints of the Duocons as the Duo bots? Do you think that could work?
The only thing that I would say with that one is you'd probably have to think of different names for them for trademarking. That was another thing too that I encountered when I worked with them, was that everything that you do, you had to keep in mind that whatever those characters were, trademarking was an issue. To go back to Iron Fist, I mean, it's pretty obvious why they couldn't go with Iron Fist,
right?
From a certain Marvel trademark perspective. But it's this kind of the same thing where Shock and Ore would have been something where they'd probably be like, well, we can't trademark that, but can we, there's usually two things that happen. Either they have to trademark a brand new name, which they usually want to not have to do because they have to go to Hasbro for that. Or what they do also, and it's something that I had to do myself, was you have to jump into Hasbro's trademark library, which is used across all their brands, including My Little Pony, G.I. Joe, and find something that sounds similar.
Yeah.
So when you have a 2-pack like that, you go, okay, Shock, what do they got? Is there a pony that has a name that's like similar to that, or is, that's the one thing that kind of sucks with that. It's the same thing that I think they had a similar problem a while back when they did one of the very first club exclusives, which was Astro Train, and it came with, they wanted to do hook, line, and sinker, but they couldn't call it hook, line, and sinker, so they called it Astro Line, Astro Sinker, and Astro Hook, I think, like something like that, just because they had to trademark a name because they couldn't call it hook, line, and sinker. So it's the same thing here, where it's like part of the hook here is being able to say it's those two characters because of its name, but the problem is then you'd probably have to find another name, and then some of that is kind of lost. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's always been another hurdle when it comes to the reality of making the exclusives, is the names of characters.
Yeah, I'm sure they could find something. There's got to be like a shock bolt or a shock blast or something.
When we did the that very last golden ticket figure, the Flash Century, that came from, I wrote the bio for that one. And it was just a matter of, they went through the archive of trademark names, and there was a My Little Pony character called Flash Century, and it was just like, okay, well, camera, Flash, I guess that kind of works, and Century, it's like it's like a guard or a protector, and that was a pony name of all things, a My Little Pony character name that was trademarked. So they worked with that and they used that and stuff. So it's something that you'd be surprised how many different titles and very almost Transformer appropriate names exist both in the G.I. Joe and in the My Little Pony brand.
All right, so moving on to the bigger guys. First up, we have Delta Magnus. Now, I don't know how they could work it into the story, because obviously Ultra Magnus is like a long time like leader of the Wreckers. So I don't know, Delta Magnus could be like his younger brother or something coming up to the ranks, or maybe he's like a Power Links kind of version of Ultra Magnus.
I've always wrote City Commander, Powered Commander from TFCon. Like, if we ever like continued the fiction, I always wrote it that he was a character that existed from like the early days of the war, like in that almost like early Quintesson kind of era.
Oh, okay.
Like even before Optimus Prime, even before Magnus, like let's say like Dion and Orion Pax, like super early in the war. And that just is more predicated because it was a Duocon design, which is like super early in Transformers engineering history. So I kind of like have that parallel with that. But the only problem I would have with this one is that the budget, where BotCon was really hesitant about leader class stuff.
Right.
Because you kind of look at like, okay, how would it work in a box set? Box sets usually the big figures, a Voyager, or at most like an Ultra. And we've never really got a leader class that was, like in a bag either.
Right.
So it's something that, while it's cool and it's it's one of those like it's a given kind of design. Like, of course, yeah, a Duocon colored Ultra Magnus. It's kind of a no brainer. But at the same time, it's like, where would that go in the budget of how the sets have worked in the past? That's the one problem. But at least you'd be lucky because the trademark is there, so Delta Magnus for sure.
Yeah, and it'd be like, I don't think they've released like an Ultra Magnus in this color scheme in North America. Like
outside of the Masterpiece, never.
Yeah. All right, and I believe the last one for me is another no-brainer. Longtime Wreckers and easy repaint of Optimal Optimus would be Primal Prime and Ape Link as the smaller Optimus. It also would homage their combining in
their
the
connection.
later 3H era Sentinel Maximus, I think his name was.
Yeah, Sentinel Maximus.
Yeah. So what do you think about this one?
I think this would be like, that would be, I always say there's that one killer app every year, like that one figure that everyone wants.
Mm-hmm.
Like this would probably be it.
Yeah.
This would probably be the one that like everyone wants. Like, it's like, I don't like the box set, but I really want that. Like that would be that figure.
Yeah.
Like every BotCon, usually people always, they kind of like, they crap on everything, but then there's always that one figure that everyone wants. Or
There's like
like
that Megatron, that
like
like
the Megatron and
2016 Megatron or
exactly
2016 Megatron.
like the Megatron that year or the year before that. Let me just turn my head and look at the like the Pretender shell, Oil Master.
Oh yeah.
A lot of people really wanted that one because that was like, especially if you're a G1 collector, that was like a piece of that history. So like, to me, this would have been that killer app. That would have been the one that everyone would have, because this appeals to somewhat G1 collectors. It appeals to BotCon collectors and completists. It appeals to the Beast Wars crew of people. So like if you're a Beast Machines collector and stuff like that, it just, it hits all those right things. And the cleverness from it too, the fact that it combines with it and stuff, like that's something that's a really smart idea. And it's also something that I could totally see something that BotCon would have ran with.
Yeah. So that's basically it from my end. So obviously I have a lot of good guy characters here, all Wrecker's team. But my real conundrum was who are these guys going to fight? Because usually in a BotCon set, it's not all, one side. You usually try and have it, even out, have an equal number of, good guys and bad guys. So that was one of the reasons, obviously, and also your history with BotCon, why I wanted to bring you in on this, Daniel. So did you have any ideas for potential BotCon releases that would work for these guys?
For your theme, like there's a lot of like kind of, I guess we'll call them like the no-brainers. You kind of just look at, who are the opposing factions or the opposite side of the line, and you could go like, okay, well, you got that, you just look at molds. You don't even look at the characters. You just go, okay, well, there was a Jetstorm mold that was used for Skywarp, like we mentioned before. And then you could go, okay, you could take the Brainstorm, and what would be, and usually what I like to do, especially when I plan out a BotCon box set, is I like to use molds that are difficult to find normally, even in their original forms. So like in the case of that Brainstorm, where it was I believe it was a Walgreens exclusive, so it's one of those things where I'd like to use molds that people had a hard time finding and give them a second chance to get it through another character. So like I could see like, retooling, even the slightest retooling a Brainstorm and turning it into some kind of, Beast Machine's Jetstorm character in Skywarp, or alternatively, like they did the same thing, make it a little larger, and now it's, it's Cyclonus from that same family of characters.
Could they go back and use the, there was another Brainstorm before the Titans Returns.
That one actually had a Headmaster gimmick also.
Yeah.
I don't know how far back they would. It's funny because they'll go far back enough to do like, one special character.
Yeah.
But sometimes the best example being that Megatron from 2016. I mean, they were using a toy that was 15 years old.
Yeah.
When you really think about it.
Because it was like RID 2001, so that would work out.
Exactly. So like it's one of the, but that's usually their hard and fast rule is they like to. I think it's just. It probably has a lot to do with the factories, where it's just they want to work with what's available, like what's close by in terms of metal cast molds and what is available to work with. And if they have to really go into the archive, then they'll have to go into the archive. A good example of that is we got those Pretender shells from the very last description service, where they did an Optimus Prime, and then they did a Megatron using the Grand Maximus Pretender shell. Yeah. That only happened not because they were like, oh, we need this Grand Maximus Pretender shell, and they went through the archive, because eHobby was playing with the idea of doing a Grand Maximus reissue if the Fortress Maximus Encore did well.
Yeah.
Which it sadly didn't in Japan. And but the point is that they actually pulled out the mold just in case. It's like, okay, well, when this does well, we're going to then do the eHobby Grand Max reissue. Didn't happen, but they already had the mold out. So that's the only reason why that happened. It's sometimes it's just the accessibility of those molds and the availability. So it's something where it's like, is that Generations Voyager Brainstorm mold, which I believe that was like a Target exclusive. I don't remember what was special about that one, but I know it was also pretty difficult to get.
Yeah.
But I know that like it's something that is that mold accessible? Is it because what happens is when a lot of these toys, when they have their run, they kind of just end up back in Rhode Island's storage facility, and then it's a matter of, can we dig it up again? So as opposed to something that's recent, where like let's say at that time that Brainstorm would be very fresh, the Titans Return one,
Right.
where that would be something a lot easier to grab. And again, from your perspective, yeah, you would use the deluxe one to make Skywarp, and then you could use that larger Voyager one to make the Cyclonus, and then you could have the pair together. But it's a matter of availability. There was a lot. You have to, like a lot of times people would always poo-poo on some of the ideas that BotCon had, but I got to experience firsthand and see how there's a lot of ideas that they had that are dream ideas even from their perspective, and they don't happen just because of X, Y, and Z. Like little things, whether it be like a trademark name or a mold not being available. Yeah. I was even playing with the idea of digging up that old Starscream Pretender shell and repainting it and doing something for a Metal Hawk for the subscription service. Again, mold wasn't available, so none of that happened in the end.
Mm-hmm.
But just little things like that. I'm trying to think. Like, I know that, like, when you look at like the Universe 1.0 toy line, you see a lot of ideas that was going to be BotCon exclusives that just never came to be. I know that one good example you mentioned with the Wreckers, this falls onto the good guy side, but like even like Rodimus was part of that crew.
Oh yeah.
And then on the flip side of it, you have like Cryotech was part of that kind of ongoing story also.
Yeah.
So it's something where you go, well, there's not really a dragon character, that we have to work with, but it's like, do we want to use something that has big wings or like a jet and make like a Cybertronian Cryotech character? Like there's a lot of, you have to dip into that creativity and see what you could kind of make from it from a storytelling perspective, because usually what happens is the toys kind of come first and then the story is made afterwards.
Right.
That's the sad reality. So it's something where it's like, I'd like to have this, but is it available? And then you write the story afterwards.
Yeah, like you'd like to be able to, dip back into like maybe Beast Hunters and repaint that Predaking as Cryotech or something, because I don't think he ever actually got a blue repaint. He was just like, he got like a bunch of black like show accurate repaints, and I think he might have got like an orange repaint at some point, but I don't
which one we're talking about here?
The Beast Hunters Predaking.
Oh,
like
that
the dragon
one.
Guy.
Yeah. He got a weird, his legend scale.
Yeah.
Got a RID 1.0 homage to, I guess, Gigatron, as he was called in the Japanese version of Car Robots, or Megatron.
Mm-hmm.
He got an homage there. He came in a 2-pack. That was a Target 2-pack for Beast Hunters. So, like, yeah, I mean, I could see something like that where they could have taken that mold and made it like, like the light blue clear and called that Cryotech. But knowing BotCon that year, like if it was like BotCon 2000, like let's say 2017, that year would have just been almost completely Titans Return.
Yeah.
It would have been almost 100%, and they would be kind of like forced into a corner to almost use all of that. All you have to do is look at the very last year. It was a Beast Wars year, and they were making Beast Wars characters out of Combiner War figures,
right?
Like so, and it's something that you would never imagine, like Tigatron being a car and stuff like that, and that didn't work out very well. But
No.
the point it really didn't. I wrote the bio for that one. That wasn't fun. Let me tell you. But I'll be the first to admit it. But it's something that
you can see where they're going with it, but they obviously had
see,
to make some compromises and stuff with the head.
Well, yeah, that's just it. It's kind of the rules, and like I said, the only exception being that Megatron, which is like, yeah, we have to use recent toys, and then they use one 15-year-old mold. But it's the same thing where we had that one year where we had Scorponok, and he was a headmaster.
Right.
And they used that old Energon mold, and then they resculpted a brand new headmaster head to work with it. Like, that was a very weird set. That was the I think it was called the Most Wanted set or something.
Yeah.
So like, but the point is that like you have weird rules with that. So it's just me looking more and going like, okay, well, you have like characters like Nemesis Prime, which was like the black bloody tusks big convoy, which was also kind of in that kind of continuity, if you will, kind of came later. And it's like, what do we use with that? Is there a big Prime character that we could kind of use to like have something similar to that? Do we have some kind of a Matrix? Do we make a brand new Matrix mold that we could use? Are we able to dip into the Power of the Prime stuff that has those Matrix molds that we could use, because those are kind of Titan Master molds?
Right.
It's little things like that where you try to find out what you have to work with, and like that's literally the process. It's what molds do we have, then you start being creative with those molds, and then you write a story around that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'll just say, like, my plan was, if 2017 was going to continue, my original plan that I was going to pitch was a return to an animated box set. And what they would always do is they'd always have like a theme, and then like some of the souvenir figures, which are the figures on the side, could go outside the theme, so they could still do other things too. Like they did that with the last time they did the animated box set. It was completely animated except for like some of the side figures, which were, I think
they had the Shattered Glass Galvatron and Action Master Thundercracker.
Exactly. So like you still had stuff like that on the side to, I guess, to appease other audiences if needed. So like my plan originally was I wanted to do kind of a prequel story in the animated continuity.
Okay.
But it was more me finding an excuse to, at the time, use all of those animated molds that never got a stateside release. So like the Wingblade Optimus Prime, the Hydra Dive Bumblebee, the Blackout, the Blackout. Yeah. So like I would take Wingblade Optimus Prime, paint them all white, and now it's Ultra Prime before he became a Magnus. So it would be kind of like him without his armor, if you will. And I'd have that the Wingblade Optimus Prime, trailer would be painted up like his armor.
Right.
So it'd be kind of this thing that he's toting around and he flies in.
Mm-hmm.
The Hydra Dive Bumblebee would be the first time we ever got a decent cliff jumper. We would take the Bumblebee mold, and we would give it a new head sculpt, which would actually look like Cliff Jumper's head. And so we'd have a more to-scale Cliff Jumper toy instead of just the Activator that got a very limited release when it came out. And so that would be another one. For the Blackout, I was playing with ideas of looking at Yokeitron's like dojo, and there was there were some characters like that, and there was one character which was Rotorstorm, which was like a sumo wrestler, and like kind of retooling it a little bit and having it be like that character and stuff, like just playing with those ideas. And then of course afterwards just jumping into the whole the whole pool of characters that exist from the Allspark Almanac and making some of those a reality. Like just going like, because the Allspark Almanac pretty much was taking pre-existing characters and kind of retooling them already, so you could kind of just use that as a guide. We could just go, hey, like take that Arcee mold and just go to town. You want to do a Chromia, you want to do this, you want to do that. Like there's so many things that could have been done. And I mean, that was just my initial pitch with those, with again the Magnus being the centerpiece of it. Not Magnus in this case, Ultra Prime, but the Magnus being the centerpiece of it, and then some other characters, and then they could build around it. Because the one thing with BotCon is no one person makes all the ideas. It really is a hodgepodge of everyone's ideas together. It's just one person decides kind of the theme, and then we kind of work around that with the molds that we have. And I mean, that's kind of what I wanted to do, just because I felt that it would sell well. I know that the last time we had a BotCon set that sold out, it was animated. It was 2011. Right. So I figured, I always say, like, if something sells well, sell it until it's it doesn't sell anymore. So it's something that, why not test the idea again? BotCon, animated still at that point was still very hot, still had a huge demand, and I just felt it would have worked. I felt it would have worked, but at the same time, the reality is they probably would have said, okay, you want to do an animated set? Figure it out with these Titan Return molds, and then it would have been terrible. It would have made no sense.
Dude, like G1 style animated characters.
It would have
and
no
stuff.
well the whole aesthetic would be lost, so
Yeah.
it would make no sense. But that's why. So like the reality is what you have here is more of a reality of probably what would have happened. They probably would have just said, "Here's the molds we're working with, make something happen." And I think they would have not ignored like a 25th anniversary because they like to throw back and revisit characters. I know they they revisited Night Racer for the subscription service. They revisited
They revisited Breakdown. Quite a lot.
Yeah, they revisited Breakdown. Like they like to revisit their history. Even the Megatron from the very last year, it was a concept that they had many years ago that just never came to be.
It was like 10 years in the making.
Yeah, so it's they like to do that kind of stuff. So I would not be surprised if they wanted to revisit those characters and finally do them justice with I don't want to say modern engineering because even when they came out it was modern engineering.
Yeah.
Just the modern aesthetic that existed for that time and what existed for those toys. But I mean, it's sad because I mean I was actually having this conversation not too long ago with an artist. I was just saying to him like how I really miss what FunPub was doing in general with BotCon and the subscription service and the club, because with the absence of them now, and like you mentioned before at the beginning of the show, like how HasCon really isn't a thing this year, and who knows what the future might be for it, we really don't have a good solid outlet for something wacky. I mean, we do have San Diego Comic-Con, but even San Diego Comic-Con doesn't take huge risks now. Now, it used to be we would get like the Knights of Unicron, that crazy hair metal, box set. But that was during a time when BotCon existed.
Yeah.
Now they kind of use whatever the San Diego Comic-Con exclusive is to be almost an advertising piece for whatever the theme of the main line is going to be. So like you have like the Metroplex, you have the Devastator. That's just kind of a mild retool of what's going to be the final product in the end, and that's kind same thing. We had the Throne of the Primes,
it's which like was the whole gimmick is you have this empty ring of things,
that
it's
you have
like
to fill up.
Go buy these in the store and fill it up.
Go buy the product that's out there right now. And that's what it is. They've become advertising pieces instead of being like, hey, let's do something really wacky and off the wall that only BotCon really would do. Or again, like, I mean, even the HasCon one. The HasCon one really was something that was birthed out of kind of a BotCon spirit because a Headmaster Arcee would be a BotCon idea.
Yeah.
It would be a BotCon idea where
and that was like 30 years coming. Like,
oh yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
The only thing is they didn't use a chrome dome mold. I think that's the only thing that isn't. I mean, it would have looked ugly.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying like that would have been part of the history.
Yeah.
What
we got looked a lot nicer, even if it wasn't 100% accurate to what that original idea was.
I love the head though. The head was amazing.
Oh yeah.
I really dug that they tried to do the exosuit and stuff. But yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say. Like it's just it's something I miss.
Yeah, it's a shame that we don't have BotCon anymore. Like we did get like some BotCon-ish stuff with those like what was it, the Battle for Velocitron and those box sets that we got with like the Metal Hawk and the Quick Switch and that kind of stuff. But we haven't really got.
The funny thing with those ones, too, those were originally, if I remember correctly, they were supposed to be Big Bad Toy Store exclusives or something. Mm-hmm. And then they ended up being a retail product afterwards with Toys R Us. I don't know. I to this day, I still don't know what was the whole design story behind it and how it came to be. It's the same thing with Lyozak, where that was originally also supposed to be kind of like a web exclusive thing. And then ultimately, in the end, it became a store thing. So... like a very weird, obscure thing.
So yeah, it's unfortunate. I don't know if Hasbro will ever revisit the idea of, doing a BotCon or something, but, I guess we can hope.
Yep.
So, I think that's it from me. That's probably it from you two.
Yeah, probably.
So, I guess I'll sign out and say thank you guys so much for watching. Let us know your thoughts on, what you think of these, what you think would be good for a BotCon exclusive, and obviously go check out Protoman over at Protoman at ProtoRetro and on the Transformers Slag podcast. And until then, see you guys next time. Do you have any final words over there?
Just enjoy Transformers.